In this episode, I finish up the eye-splicing of the lines for Skylark. In addition, the cables for the forestay and the shrouds get their connections. The turnbuckles get an upgrade with locking nuts, and I get the sails installed. Well, that completes the final line. This one is the jib sheet. So now that I've got all of the lines all with their eye splice in ready to go, the next thing I need to do is to calculate the length of the shrouds and the forestay. I used the Pythagorean theorem to calculate the length of the shrouds and the forestays. After calculating C, the hypotenuse, I then subtracted the length of the turnbuckles. Well, now that I've calculated those two lengths, I can now cut some cable to those lengths. And on the end of the cable, then I'm going to put this wire in, stainless steel fitting. It'll go on the end of the wire, and they will get with a clevis pin in here and hold it on there like that. Now the wire goes in there, and then this gets swagged on there. Now, let me show you how I do that. That cable slides right into that end, and you can see it come out the top there. So we want to just back it off so it's just through there. Now the manufacturer says to swag this 3 times. And put a second one down here at the bottom. And the third one, I'm going to rotate 90 degrees and go right in the middle. On the opposite end of the cable, I put a copper Nicopress oval sleeve. It can't be seen in the video, but I put a mark where the top of the fitting should be on the shroud. Into the loop, I inserted a stainless steel thimble. I then swagged the Nicopress sleeve twice. And before I start working on the forestay and shrouds, there is an issue that I wanted to address that several people asked me about in a couple of videos ago, and that is with the turnbuckles, how I'm going to lock them in there, especially now that I'm using these enclosed turnbuckles where if they're open, you can run a wire through there, something like that, to stop it from turning. Because you can imagine, this is on the boat, that these could turn with the cable twisting. So what I need to do is to come up with a way to lock that in there. So the simplest way to do that is with a lock nut. Now it's really easy to do on this side where the threads are right-hand threads. You could just simply find a 5/16 nut to put on there. The problem is over here with the left-hand threads, it's very difficult to find a left-hand nut, and if you do, they're quite expensive per nut. The other thing is, it's literally impossible to find them in bronze. So what I've come up with is that I've bought a piece of hexagonal stock here that is brass, just like the turnbuckle here is. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill in here and tap a hole and cut these off then about 1/4 of an inch or so. So this is very easy to get. I've got a tap that is the 5/16 24. So I bought a left-hand threaded tap that is 5/16 24. So I'm going to put this on the lathe, center it, and drill a hole in there, and then I'm going to tap that. So I've got my two nuts here, my right hand thread one and my left hand thread one. You can see on these turnbuckles I've already put those nuts on there. So it's just a matter of taking these off here. All we have to do then is take a 1/2 inch wrench here and tighten that down like that, and now it's locked in there very tightly. And do the opposite here, right hand. There we have it, very nice and tight. I pulled the boat out of the studio so I'd have room to step up the mast. So one of the first things we want to do is to get the mast all set up before we step it up into the boat. And that's really the first step of getting the rigging started. So I've done a few things to the mast here. One of the things is I've added a sail track. Now there are several ways you can attach a sail to a mast. One are with hoops, and the other is by lashing the sail on. So I've elected to use a sail track. Now these sail tracks have these little trucks that the sail is attached to that slide on here. And they slide on here just like this, and then there are 5 of them that hold the sail on. So let me show you how I attach the sail to this little sail truck. The sail slides are attached to the left of the sail at each grommet. They are bound using Dacron sail twine. Each slide got about 8 to 10 loops of twine finished with a wound binding. So the first thing I want to do is to attach the shrouds and the forestay to the mast cone here. And I've marked all of them. This one I have a little F on there for forestay. And they simply go on here with a little stainless clevis pin on there. So the next step is to attach the halyards to the top of the mast. So I've got the 3 halyards laid out here, and this is the jib halyard, and it is 32 feet long. And this is the throat halyard, and it is 36 feet long. And then finally we have the peak halyard, and it is 40 feet long. So what I need to do is I'm going to attach them one at a time and get them all set up the way they need to be. So I'm going to start with the jib halyard. So the first halyard here is the jib halyard, and it fastens on here. So this is the jib halyard. The important thing is the orientation of this. This is the bitter end that goes down to the cleat, and this is the working end which goes over to the top of the sail. So you can see it's important that that is oriented properly so that that will work. The throat halyard starts here at this bail, and then it runs down here until it gets to this hook that will go on the throat hook. And I have it here just attached to the tack cleat for the sail temporarily right now. And then this runs up to the throat block here and find the bitter end. And we want this to go from port side to starboard side. That way it'll end up on the right side of the mast so that it can be tied off on the cleat. And then finally we have the peak halyard, which attaches up here on the cone like so. It then goes through the block with the span hook on it for the gaff bridle. And then it comes up here to the peak halyard block, like so. I tied off the rounds and shrouds in order to manage them while stepping up the mast. I've got all of the lines all organized and where they should be now. So the next step is we can get the boom and the gaff boom located on here. So the next thing we want to do is to hook the gaff bridle on, which goes onto this spanner hook. And what we need to do is to put a little binding on that so that it won't pop back off. Well, I've got all of the rigging all set up now. Now what I've done is I have put the main sheet in here and then fastened it down tight so that the boom is secure. And then I've taken a lashing and I've lashed the gaff to it and then lifted up on the gaff bridle here so that it's nice and tight. So what I'm going to do is get the sail, and I'm going to start by lashing it on the gaff. Different kinds of lashing are illustrated here in the Complete Rigger's Apprentice. And you can see that there's illustrations here of 4 different ways of lashing the sail to the boom. This is the most common, which is sort of a spiral lashing, and is probably the quickest way to do it. Another way is to tie each grommet over the boom with a reef knot or a square knot. And down here are two other choices. This is a half hitch lashing, and this is a Marlin hitch lashing. Now the difference between these two is very subtle. If we look here where there's an illustration of the two, and it's basically that the lashing line here goes over the top, and here it goes under. So this is a half hitch, and this is a Marlin hitch, and this is the one that I'll be using. I'm tying off the throat of the sail to the gaff jaws, and I'm securing it with a reef knot. After I tied off to the throat, I then tied a bowen here at the first grommet, and now what we'll need to do is to take our line and go through and around and make sure that we go through this loop here. Now this part, this doesn't have to be very tight. We'll tighten up as we get on down the line. Through and around and back through the loop. We can now go through and tighten these so that it's not super tight but snug. We can arrange it so that that lays very nicely up against the sail. I lashed the foot of the sail to the boom using the same lashing method. For the jib, I started with a bowen as I did with the head and foot of the mainsail. After attaching the jib halyard to the head of the jib, I began attaching the jib hanks to the forestay. Here I'm attaching the sail tack to the jib club. Using the same Marlin hitch lacing, I attached the jib to the jib club. This sailor knife is a direct copy of the British military clasp knife. It has a sheepfoot blade that is great for cutting line. The shackle key is great for tightening and loosening shackle pins. The Marlin spike does a good job of picking lines and loosening knots. Also has a bottle opener and a stainless steel handle with a 2-inch ruler on one side and a 5 centimeter on the other. Also a screwdriver and a lanyard ring for secure storage. This one was made by Maxim, and I'll put a link in the description. Well, that's it for all of the rigging on Skylark. That puts us one step closer to the launching. Speaking of launching, many of you know that I'll be launching the boat during the Wooden Boat Show that is in Mystic, Connecticut, and it will be from June 28th to the 30th. We'll be launching that Friday on June 28th. So to commemorate that activity, or the launching, I've designed this t-shirt for the launching. Now it's a shirt that I designed. It has the picture of Skylark sailing there on the back and the date and so forth. So if you're able to come to the launching, it would be great if you had a t-shirt that you could wear while we're launching. And if you can't come to the launching, it'd be a great way for you to become a part of it without actually being there. The proceeds for this t-shirt campaign will help fund the launching, so I appreciate any support that any of you can give. Now the t-shirt campaign starts today, May 12th, and it only runs for 2 weeks. So then after that, you will no longer be able to get this shirt. So the link is in the description, so I hope to see you at the launching wearing one of these shirts. So as always, thanks for watching, and remember, if you're going to make it beautiful.